So, as you know, as we just sang, our theme this month is talking about love. And on this fourth talk in the series, my topic is the prospering power of love. Reverend Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity, the Unity movement, wrote a book titled Prosperity. And in it, he wrote, "Tell me what kind of thoughts you're holding about yourself and your neighbors, and I can tell you just what you might expect in the way of health, finances, and harmony." He went on to say, "You cannot love and trust in God if you hate and distrust people. The two ideas, love and hate, or trust and mistrust, simply cannot both be present in your mind at the same time. When you're entertaining one, you may be sure that the other is absent. Trust other people and use the power that you accumulate from that act to trust God. Or trust in God and use the power that you accumulate from that act to trust people. There's healing in this," he said. "It works wonders. Love and trust are dynamic, vital powers." I think it's fascinating that his quote is from his chapter on indebtedness in his book in Prosperity. And as we already talked about last week, from the words of Ernest Holmes, love is the self-givingness of spirit through the desire of life to express itself in terms of creation. And that's the desire of life itself in the macrocosm, that is, divine spirit, creative energy, whatever you call that originating sense of creation. And as it expresses itself, so too do we express ourselves. We're, as the saying goes, cut off the same cloth. We're made out of that same creative process to express. Usually when we hear that phrase, though, we assume that it refers to whatever we call first cause or God or divine intelligence, creative spirit, universal energy. Truth is, it does also refer to each of us individually. So spirit, through the desire of life, means you and me. Its desire of life is its expression, which is what we are. We are how the source, or the creative force behind all of us, expresses itself in terms of creation. So another way to say this is that it's spirit's self-givingness. That is total and unconditional love. That it's poured in, around, and through each one of us relentlessly, endlessly, completely. The question is, what are we doing with that gift? What are we doing individually with that gift? That we can do it collectively. First, we must do it individually in order to be able to recognize as it unfolds collectively. See, this is a cosmic force. We've talked about that before. Its expression is spontaneous and unconditional. Remember, we talked about that last week. The truth is, it's really difficult to resist. One must really work at negativity to resist this. And the energy that we waste in holding on to negativity is so much more easily channeled into what I'm talking about here, in a positive unfolding. And so many of you here on Sunday mornings in Standing in the Light have talked about how these things have unfolded in your life, sometimes almost shockingly quick or incredibly expanded from where you started or thought you started, or in a way that you weren't expecting, but that was at least as good, if not better, than what you had thought to begin with. That's what I'm talking about. And those of you who have been taking classes, there isn't a class night go by that we don't have at least one aha. that shows up for at least one of us. And when one of us experiences that, the others go, oh, yeah, that's right. So you see, we don't pull each other along, but hand in hand and arm in arm, we bring each other along in expanding this philosophy, this teaching, such that we are expanding our individualized acceptance by means of others, who are expanding their individualized acceptance by means of others, and so it goes. So here's an example of how love prospers. This appears in Catherine Ponder's book on prosperity, and it's titled, Attorney Uses Love to Collect Money. This is an attorney who had studied Charles Fillmore's book on prosperity, and he eventually related how once he had collected on 2 big accounts of his by releasing love and trust as dynamic, vital forces, powers. He said at the end of a particular year, in going over his books, he noticed that 2 especially large accounts remained unpaid. And he recalled that Fillmore had written in his book on prosperity, a thought of debt produces debt. You know, we talk about that all the time, don't we? What you think about comes about. Wherever you direct your energies is what you attract to you. So when you think negatively, and most of us would categorize debt as negative, then that's what we attract to ourselves. So he remembered that a thought of debt will produce debt. So he reasoned that as long as he believed in debt, resented debt, or attached the thought of debt to himself or others, he would remain in debt. So to overcome such negative thoughts, he decided that he would invoke the power of love and trust. And he made a mental note of the clients he wanted to send that to, who just happened to be those who owed him some large amounts of money. He began blessing them by name each day, each one separately, each one sincerely, erasing the idea of debt attached to each one. And he said after he'd been using that system really for a very short time, the 2 clients who owed those largest sums settled with him on the same day. And within an equally short additional period of time, all of his outstanding accounts had been paid. It gives you chicken skin, doesn't it? Particularly if you're in business and you have any outstanding accounts right now. So now you may think this is an anomaly, but I've heard many stories by people. Some I even know. And the most impressive of those is the one that Ernest Holmes told on himself. He said when he opened his Institute of Religious Science in Los Angeles in the 1940s, his primary purpose was to teach classes, to teach this philosophy in class. However, quickly, his students and others began to schedule appointments with him, one-on-one appointments, to have him do spiritual mind treatment for them. And of course he did that. And there was then, as there is now, a fee for those services. His students and some of his other clients were well aware of that because it was then, as it is now, a part of the understanding of the value of spiritual mind treatment. However, he said after about 6 months of providing those services for people, he discovered that many of them had not responded by paying for his services. So when he came to his office the next morning after that thought had come to the conscious realization in his mind, he decided that he would stay there in his office until he knew why. Now, how do you suppose he did that? Spiritual mind treatment. What is it I need to know? And he said it came to him so quickly that it was almost embarrassing that he hadn't thought about it sooner. That it was he who was not accepting the value of his very fine work. He remembered the love with which his work was offered and accepted by others. And he said as he did that, and he began to bless that whole process and began to accept his own worthiness, his own ability to be that which he wished to see. Within days, payments from his clients began to show up in the mail, brought into the office, left for him, even when he wasn't there. So you see, we can all learn and progress from loving ourselves and the value of what we bring to the world. We can all accept the prospering power of love. Well, as you know, if you've been attending this past month, we're celebrating the season for nonviolence. And this is the time of year from the end of January through the first week in April that this occurs on an annual basis. And each day, AGNT, the Alliance for Global New Thought, provides us with inspirational words, quotes, contacts, prayer type recommendations that you can go online to the AGNT Season for Nonviolence website and print out for yourself if you choose. And there are a couple of extras there on the table if you don't have a computer, don't know how to go online, don't have internet. I mean, there is no excuse for not having one of these unless you don't want one. And their intention, all of the information that they offer during the Season for Nonviolence from their website is at no financial cost to any of us. It's their gift of love, which they know we pass on as generously as they do. So this helps us to activate and deepen our own positive contributions to peace in ourselves, in our homes, in our communities, in the world. And today's word on this 64-day list is listening. That magnificent art for which we have been provided these two body parts, our ears. We've also been equipped with the art of feeling, not just with our hands, but with an internal mechanism which we call emotion. And one of the strongest emotions, the most positive emotion we can nurture and expand, is a sense of having developed our own sense of worthiness such that we prosper and know that we can circulate that. An integral part of listening is listening to our own intuition, trusting it, and being the example that we wish to see. Sometimes our emotions are what cause us to hesitate when we think about being gracious with our giving, as in money. We're more comfortable with giving our time, perhaps our belongings that we no longer use, our advice. But when it comes to money, ooh, that's a different story. And as if the creators of the online peace mandala, the online living peace mandala, from which these 64 days of daily words come, And it's as if they knew I was going to give this talk today, thank you very much. Tomorrow's daily word is generosity. Generosity. J.C. Penney used to say, you can't outgive God. The universal creative power abhors a vacuum, and it rushes to refill it. So why do I tell you that? 2 reasons. First of all, because in order to attract money, if that's our intention, we must circulate it. It's not about digging a hole and putting it in so that it doesn't appreciate and we don't appreciate it, but rather that because the universe abhors a vacuum, the more one gives, the more one receives. Works with love, doesn't it? Works with friendships, doesn't it? Works with health, doesn't it? Why wouldn't it work with money? That's an interesting question. We may need to do a series on that. But in our Principles of Financial Freedom class, which we just finished, we learned about the act of gracious living, gracious giving. Gracious living too, but gracious giving for this talk, which is a recognition that we are circulating good in the form of money as a part of the universal law of circulation. We don't bring money in with us when we arrive here on planet Earth. At least I've never seen that. Have you? No. And we don't take it with us when we leave either. So while we're here, one of the most important things we do is to circulate it in positive ways. Putting God in its loving givingness first financially to the places where we receive our spiritual nourishment on a regular, consistent basis is a sure way to release that prospering power of love from within us. That is, providing we deliberately put love into those acts of giving. In other words, we commit to giving with love. Actually, it's easy to put love into your giving when you realize that all you receive belongs to Spirit anyway, by means of you. And you are simply returning to it a portion or more of what you have been given. This realization takes the fear and the resentment out of giving. Instead, it expresses our love of God and our appreciation for the many blessings that we have received, are receiving, and expect to continue receiving, and into our acts of sharing with our spiritual community. So, the secret of the prospering power of love is that we always put God first, or whatever that creative energy is called by you. We always put that first, including in our finances. What this means is that we are opening the way for the increase of abundant, permanent good in every phase of our lives. And remembering that we deserve nothing less. Or if we were to put that in a positive way, that we deserve all of that and more. See how you can change with words? You can change the feeling? We deserve nothing more. We deserve all of that and more. So here are 6 surprises that are the outcome of giving the first share of what you receive to where you are obtaining spiritual nourishment. First of all, you'll be surprised at the amount of money that you have for your spiritual teaching. Second, you'll be surprised at the deepening of your spiritual understanding of universal circulation. Third, you'll be surprised at the ease with which you can meet your other financial obligations. And you'll be surprised at the ease with which you can go from 1/10 or whatever you choose as a commitment of your income to an even greater amount in return for the spiritual nourishment that you are receiving. Fifth, you'll be surprised at how the way conscious or committed giving prepares you to be a wise steward of the remaining bounty with which you've been blessed. And sixth, you'll be especially surprised at yourself for not having adopted this kind of conscious or committed giving method sooner on behalf of your prosperity. So indeed, the power of divine love can meet every need. It always has and always will meet every need when we allow it, when we open up to that, when we get into this law of circulation. The story of the attorney who blessed every one of his clients is also the story of a person who gave of himself first in providing the best of himself as a lawyer, and then blessing each of his clients knowing that their debts were erased. The power of divine love is a prospering power which includes finances, includes money, and includes assets. It's a dynamic force, a positive energy, and as our trust and our faith in stating and sharing our good grows, our own prosperity and abundance inevitably grows. And so it is.
So it is.